got the Hotone Verbera on the bench today. This is their new convolution-based reverb pedal, meaning that it uses reverb IRs to create time-based effects. This goes beyond that though and adds an algorithmic reverb engine. You've got some very flexible inputs and outputs, as well as built-in MIDI control of the presets and parameters. Furthermore, this is pretty unique in that you can use the hardware to capture your own reverb IRs, whether they are of real spaces or of hardware reverb units. They call that the clone feature on here. So let's take a very quick overview of the hardware, and then I'll show you how the basic operation works to either tweak or create a preset from scratch. Then we're just going to hear a bunch of sounds on here because this has so many gorgeous sounds built in as factory presets. It does come loaded with plenty of factory IRs as well. So if you want to scroll through the presets, the default foot switch mode will let you do that. It's just going to be the right foot switch to scroll up and the left foot switch to scroll down. If you press both at the same time though, this will let you activate or deactivate the reverb and then access the freeze function on there. And we will hear that when I play through a bunch of the presets. You've also got the ability to scroll through the presets with this preset encoder over here. Over on the right, you can scroll through the different IRs over here. And one thing that I like about this is that if you push this encoder, it will change the way the built-in IRs or the user IRs that you upload with the software are sorted. So we can sort them by smoothing, by brightness, by the amount of diffusion, by the attack characteristics, or just alphabetically. I like that you can also sort them by length on there as well. So having those different options on there is just a really nice way to organize that. For example, if you've got a reverb and you want something slightly longer, set it up so that it sorts it by IR length, and then you can scroll from your starting point on there. If you want to find a specific IR, sort it alphabetically, and then you can find that one on there. Another cool thing about this is you've got a bunch of alt functions on here. So if I press this, you will see the color on the encoders change. So in the orange mode, this is going to be the primary set of controls that control what's happening with the reverb IR on there. So for example, I can tweak the decay, I can tweak the attack on there, I can tweak the tone and the mix over here. If I hit the Alt button though, what's going to happen is I have control over the algorithmic reverb. Think of this like a secondary reverb that can be used to extend the reverb IRs in there. Furthermore, I can tweak the pre-delay and the modulation of that extra reverb and its mix control on there. So one shortcoming of convolution reverb or IR-based reverb is that it cannot capture the modulation characteristics that are inherent in real spaces or on hardware reverb units. So the way Hotone are getting around this is you've got your primary convolution reverb engine in there, then you've got an algorithmic reverb engine on there that kind of adds to it and extends it. And this makes it a really unique reverb in that way. It's not just like a simple IR loader on there that gives you a bunch of static sounding reverbs. You can manipulate them, you can enhance them, you can kind of make them their own thing. And I really like that. That is one of the advantages of digital technology like this, is exploring new sounds. And I think the factory presets do a great job of that. So let's just say we wanted to start out with a preset. Let's do this Brit plate on here. I've currently got it bypassed. I've got a crunchy sound from my Axe effects. Let's just have a listen to it at the stock settings. Then I'm going to tweak the basic settings on the IR, and then I'll extend it with the algorithmic reverb and maybe add a bit of modulation to it. So you could hear on there that I was blending between that plate reverb IR and then the extra algorithmic IR on there, and I was able to add some modulation. Now, I think that modulation is really powerful, along with the freeze function for these longer ambient style reverbs. And I think this very first preset on here, the Verbera preset, does a great job of that. I'm just going to bring up the mix on the IR and on the algorithmic part of the reverb. We'll start with the modulation all the way down. This already sounds super lush, but when I add some modulation with that secondary function on there, I think it really brings it to life, especially once I kick the freeze in. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how easy it is to get some pretty epic sounds out of this and how to control the basic operation on there. If you do want to save a preset on there, it is fairly straightforward. You just need to go to your preset encoder here and press it. This will then give you the ability to save it anywhere you like. There's 200 preset slots on there. Using the software, you can load up your own reverb IRs, or you can use the built-in cloning function to capture a hardware reverb device. I've got a preset that I love on my Eventide H3000. I'll show you how to capture that. You just basically need to connect a stereo cable to the input of the Verbera and then use one of the outputs on the Verbera to send the cloning signal to your hardware reverb unit. So if you had like a Big Sky or a UA Golden or something like that and you wanted to capture it, you could do that. I'll give you a quick run through of that. Then we're going to hear a bunch of these factory presets on here. So a quick tutorial on the cloner, then loads and loads of ambient sounds. Making a clone is pretty fast and pretty easy. You just need to take the left output of the Verbera to the input of your hardware reverb and then come back to the input either with a stereo cable. In this case, I'm using a dual TS to TRS cable. If you've just got a mono reverb that you want to clone, then you'll just need to use a standard guitar cable or TS cable. When you've got everything connected, press and hold the clone button right here and then press start. This is going to initiate the process. You can probably see the indicators on the Eventide and the rack back there lighting up. I've got a preset on there called Breathing Canyon that I love the sound of. I've turned the modulation off on there. It is just worth noting that if you've got a reverb that has any modulation or pitch shifting, you'll need to disable that in order to clone it. That's just one of the limitations of the IR style reverbs. Let's have a look. Where are we at? We're nearly at 90% on here. So a very quick preset in there. Once I've captured that or cloned it, I can save it and I can rename it, and then we're going to have a listen to it. So if we want to save it, we'll hit save. Once you've hit save, you can use the preset or the IR encoder to select the character that you want to change and then press it to select through this list on here. So I'll give that an appropriate name. Let's compare that clone we made with the hardware. We'll start off with the Eventide. They both sound really nice. The clone is pretty close on there. What I like is that I can go in there now and I can edit things like the overall tone of the reverb. I can use the Alt to add some modulation. I could mix in some of the extra reverb on there as well and turn this into its own thing. I'm not just stuck with a simple IR reverb loader on there. I can now use that as a starting point and tweak it to my taste. I really hope you enjoyed the sounds in this video. This is a very well thought out, curated reverb pedal, and I love the combination of convolution and algorithmic reverb to not only capture existing sounds, but to create some brand new sounds on there. I really like the way the freeze works as well. The fact that you still have reverb on your core guitar sound on there while you've got that frozen pad underneath there. Not a lot of other pedals do that. They will like kill all the reverb on your main guitar sound in order to have that pad going in there. So if you want a great reverb that you can freeze, this is fantastic. It's a great price point as well. The fact that you've got stereo ins and outs on there, you can actually power it via USB-C as well if you want to do that. I think the only thing I'm not crazy about is where they put the MIDI jacks on here. So they've kind of stuck them at the front of the pedal. You probably want some right angle jacks for that if you want it to be tidy on your pedal board. I'm fairly certain you can do MIDI over USB-C on this though. There are a bunch of MIDI settings and you can have the little jacks on there be MIDI capable over TRS, or you can just have them set up with an expression pedal, and Hotone makes some really nice expression pedals as well. This was not exactly what I expected when they asked me to do a demo of a reverb pedal. I just assumed it would be taking some of the reverbs in the Ampero series, which I really like, but this is like a whole new thing, and I feel like there's a lot of great features on there, like those infinite encoders on there, the alt functions that are both labeled on there and which can change the color, so you've got visual feedback. The software works really nice for loading up your own IRs, and again, the unique feature of being able to capture your own reverb IRs. That's it for today. I'm going to pull up stumps. I'll play you out with a few more examples with the Verbera. Thank you to Hotone for sending me this so that I could make this video. If you want to support what I'm doing directly, there's links to my Patreon. You can grab my free cab IR, or you can listen to some of the music that I make with my band Ragdoll by checking the video description. Leave a comment and let me know what you think of the Verbera, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.